I used to work the night shift at a small hotel, and something happened about a year ago that I can't forget. It still sends a chill down my spine. I have no idea what that man's plan was, and thinking about it makes me feel sick, especially knowing how long he was there before I realized he wasn't supposed to be. The hotel was tiny, 3 floors, maybe 40 rooms. It wasn't busy, usually only 10 or 15 rooms filled on weeknights. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., mostly quiet and uneventful. I didn't mind. I'd sit behind the front desk, finish paperwork, glance at the cameras, or if it was really dead, watch YouTube on my phone. The lobby itself was small, just the desk, a few couches with the TV off to the side, and some vending machines in the corner. Behind the desk sat a little office with a computer, a chair, and a glass window, so I could still see the lobby while inside. After midnight, the front doors locked automatically. Guests had to buzz in, and I'd press a button to let them through. Usually nothing happened after midnight, maybe the occasional late check-in. But one night, everything changed. Around 11 p.m., a man buzzed to be let in. I opened the door. He looked mid-40s, tall and a bit lean, wearing jeans and a baseball cap, a backpack slung over one shoulder. He asked if we had a room. I told him the price. He nodded, handed me a card, and it went through. I gave him a key card for room 214 on the 2nd floor. He lingered though. After I handed him the key, he looked at me a second too long, 3 or 4 seconds of blank, unreadable expression, before turning toward the elevator. Nothing screamed danger, but it stuck with me. I settled back behind the desk and scrolled on my phone. Around midnight, I glanced up and nearly jumped. He was back. This time he didn't approach the desk. He simply walked past me and sat in the lounge area, facing the dark TV. No phone, no book, not even nodding off, just sitting, staring at the blank screen. Guests sometimes hang out in the lobby, so at first I brushed it off, but after half an hour, the silence felt wrong. I got up to grab water from the vending machine, and as I crossed the lobby, I could feel his eyes tracking me. I didn't look directly at him, but I knew he was watching, until I slipped back behind the desk. Uneasy doesn't begin to describe it. Around 1 a.m., bored, I opened the reservation system on the office computer. That sits when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Room 214, vacant. I stared at the screen, whispering, "What?" I double-checked the record. I had just checked him in. An hour earlier, I checked that guy in. At least I thought I had. Maybe I'd made a mistake. I opened the check-in logs to be sure, but there was nothing. No name, no charge, nothing at all. Heart pounding. I pulled up the transaction screen to confirm his payment. Again, nothing. I could have sworn I swiped his card. I even heard the beep when it went through, but the system was blank. A knot tightened in my stomach. I picked up the phone and dialed room 214. It rang and rang 10 times. No answer. Next, I checked the key card entry log, which records every time a door is opened. The screen showed no activity for 214. That's when it hit me. He had never gone to the room at all. I glanced toward the lounge. There he was, still sitting perfectly still, eyes locked on the dark TV. A cold weight settled in my chest. Maybe it was a system glitch, I thought, but the empty logs and missing payment told me otherwise. I watched him for another 15 minutes, debating. Finally, around 1:30, I forced myself to walk over. "Everything okay?" I asked. He turned his head slowly, face unreadable. "I just can't sleep," he said in a flat voice, then turned back to the blank screen. I nodded, retreating behind the desk, my hands shaking. By 2 a.m., he was gone. My stomach dropped. I scanned the lobby. Nothing. Then I spotted him at the far end of the hallway, near the bathrooms, half hidden in shadow, motionless. I pretended to work on the computer, sneaking glances, as he stood there for what felt like forever. Finally, he drifted back to the lounge, like nothing had happened. I called my manager, voice low, explaining everything. She sounded tired, and told me to keep an eye on him, and call the police if he did anything threatening. It already feels threatening, I thought, but I hung up and turned to the security monitors. On the cameras, I watched him roam down the first-floor hallway to the dead end, standing there for minutes, into the stairwell, staying inside for 10 more. Each time I looked up, he had moved again, by the vending machines, near the elevators, lurking in dim corners, always staring. By 3:30, I'd had enough. I called the non-emergency police line and explained that a man was wandering the hotel who didn't seem to be a guest. They said they'd send someone. While I waited, he crept closer to the desk, 15 feet away, just watching me, barely blinking, silent. I forced myself to keep typing, though my breath came in shallow bursts. At 3:50, the buzzer sounded. My heart jumped. Maybe the police, but it was only a late-night guest returning. I let them in quickly, and the stranger turned his head, eyes following the guest across the lobby, like a predator studying prey. Minutes later, he vanished again. I checked the cameras. There he was, standing outside a guest room door on the first floor, just standing. That's when I called 911. I told them a man who wasn't a guest was outside someone's room, and I didn't know what he planned to do. They said officers were on their way. I kept my eyes glued to the monitor as he lingered at the door for 3 long minutes. Then he turned and walked back toward the lobby. This time he approached the desk. Slowly, he leaned over the counter, his face too close, and asked in a low, gravelly voice, "Is there any food?" The sound of it made my skin crawl. He glanced toward the vending machines in the corner, gave a small, unsettling smile, and walked away. I sat frozen, eyes locked on the clock, silently begging the police to arrive. Finally, 4:10 a.m. 2 officers stepped through the door. I buzzed them in, and immediately pointed toward the lounge. He was there again, calmly seated, as if nothing had happened. The officers approached him, and spoke quietly. They asked for his ID, questions I couldn't hear. After a few minutes, they guided him outside. One officer returned to update me. The man wasn't a guest. The credit card he'd handed me was stolen. He had no bags, no reservation, nothing. He'd simply pretended to check in to gain access to the building. They charged him with trespassing and possession of a stolen card. When they left, I sat trembling until sunrise, checking the cameras every few seconds, half expecting him to reappear. The thought that haunted me most was that he'd been inside for hours, wandering the halls, standing outside guest rooms, watching me from different corners, when he was never supposed to be there. I still don't know what his plan was, but I know it wasn't good. That was the scariest night of my life. My name is Meredith. I'm 24, and I work the night shift at a tiny gas station off County Road 11, the kind of place you only notice if you're out of gas or completely lost. I took the job because it was quiet and predictable. I liked that, at least I used to. It started on a Thursday night, around 1 a.m. The air outside was damp and still, and the constant hum of the overhead lights was starting to get under my skin. I was about to microwave a cinnamon roll. I didn't even want, when the door chime broke the silence. A man walked in, mid-40s, maybe older, green coat, messy hair, dry lips, like he hadn't smiled in years. He didn't go for coffee or chips, like most people. Instead he stopped, near the counter, and stared at me with a strange familiarity. "Hi," I said, forcing a polite smile. "You always work this late," he said. Yeah, mostly." He smiled faintly. I figured. I spurve passed through a few times, noticed it's always you. That unsettled me more than I let show. "Oh yeah, right. Small town," I replied. But he didn't leave. "Meredith, right?" I froze. I wasn't sit wearing a name tag. Before I could ask how he knew, he continued. "You have nice handwriting," he said, gesturing toward the whiteboard where I'd written "Cinnamon coffee is back." "Most people dot their biceps with circles. You use little slashes, very specific, thoughtful." I didn't respond. He didn't buy anything, just stood there for another minute, watching me as though studying every reaction. Finally, he nodded. "I sip and Paul," he said softly. "Just curious, that sips all." Then he walked out, into the fog. After that, he started showing up at random times. Not every night, not enough to scream stalker, but often enough that I stopped believing it was coincidence. Sometimes Paul came inside, other nights he just sat in his car at the far edge of the lot, headlights off, watching. One night I tried to ignore him. He wandered in, bought a bottle of water, and lingered, like always. "You sit quieter tonight," he said. "Long shift," I muttered, keeping my eyes on the register. He slowly scanned the store, as if taking inventory. "It must get lonely," he said. "Just you out here in the dark, no one else for miles." "I'm fine," I replied. He leaned on the counter. "You ever get scared being a woman alone at night?" His voice wasn't threatening, that made it worse. Just curious, almost casual, like he was asking about the weather. I stepped back. "Do you need anything else?" He tilted his head. "You always keep the door to the back room locked. Smart. I noticed you check it around 2 a.m. almost every night." My stomach knotted. I didn't set answer. "I sit to let you get back to it," he said with a soft, almost apologetic smile. "Didn't sit mean to make you uncomfortable." Then he walked out. After that night, I started walking to my car with my keys between my fingers. I kept a tire iron under the counter. I changed the curtains in my apartment. I even showered with the bathroom door locked, even when I was alone. Sometimes he didn't show up. I might go a week without seeing him. That was worse, never knowing when he'd reappear. Then one night, after a quick break, I returned to find a Polaroid on the counter. It was me, refilling the windshield washer bin, outside, taken that very night. Close, too close. There was no note, but the slash dot over the I in the word windshield on the bin label was circled in red ink. The next time he came in, I said had enough. "Leave," I said, my voice shaking. "If you stay, I sip and calling the police." Paul only nodded. "I get it," I said, been too forward. "You've been following me," I said, hating the crack in my voice. "I just think you're the kind of person who's used to being misunderstood. I thought maybe you'd appreciate someone who pays attention," he replied. "That sip's not paying attention, that sip's obsession." He didn't set flinch. "Would it be easier if I wore a smile and brought a soda every night? Would I seem normal if I talked about sports and pretended I didn't set notice the way your shoes are a half size too big, or how your left eyelid twitches when you set tired?" By then I was already dialing 911. He didn't stop me. The police arrived quickly. He didn't resist. He just stood there, arms at his sides, waiting. They searched his car and found a notepad filled with dates and times, my schedule notes about my walks, my clothes, my groceries. One page held only my name, written over and over until it became a dark, frantic scribble. Paul kept repeating the same line to the officers. "I just noticed things. I'm just a curious guy." The restraining order went through that week. I don't still work nights anymore. I don't even live in the same town. The company transferred me to another station 2 hours away, but the fear lingers. When I'm driving home, and a car follows me for too long, the back of my neck prickles. And sometimes I still remember the way Paul said my name, like he'd practiced it, like he already knew exactly how it would feel in his mouth. I want to start this next part by saying that, as I write this, it happened just last night. I'm 22, female, and I work the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station. I've been there just under 2 months. My schedule is Thursday through Saturday. My coworker Max covers Sunday through Wednesday. Around 2:30 a.m., Max stopped by with his friend Ben to grab coffee and say hi. They'd taken magic mushrooms a few hours earlier, so they were in that giggly drifting state, honestly kind of entertaining. As we talked, Ben mentioned something odd. A car parked out in the lot, engine running, lights off, someone inside. When Ben asked the man about it, the guy claimed he was waiting on a DoorDash order. Normally that wouldn't be strange, except I hadn't received an order in nearly 2 hours. I'd spent most of the night in the back cleaning, away from the counter and the windows, so I hadn't noticed anything. We brushed it off, and Max and Ben stepped outside to smoke a cigar and play with Max's dog. But once I was alone, the thought bothered me. How long had that car been sitting there, hidden from my view? About an hour later, they came back for more coffee. This time Max told me more. The car had been parked in a blind spot the whole time. While they were outside, the man inside kept looking up from his phone to watch them, and the store's doors. Ben, still high and fearless, finally walked over and asked, "What sips up? Why are you looking at us?" At first the man pretended not to speak English. Then he switched to English, mumbled something about having the wrong address, and sped off. Here sets the part that chilled me. Max said the car looked brand new, and had no license plate. There was also a heap of blankets in the back, enough to hide someone. As Ben confronted him, another car pulled in, also brand new, lights off, no plates. The moment the first car left, the second one followed. Max and Ben stayed about 15 more minutes, then headed home, warning me to stay alert. Around 6 a.m. Max came back, sober now, and we talked it over. He admitted that even when the high wore off, the man's behavior had unsettled him, constantly checking his phone, watching them, keeping an eye on the entrance and the store's doors. We both realized how easily the night could have gone differently. If Max and Ben hadn't been there. If I'd been alone the entire time. I still don't know if it was coincidence, or if those two cars were planning something worse. But now, every weekend shift, I carry a knife in my pocket, just in case. I always carry a small knife, but my gut tells me that if those people in the parking lot had meant harm, it wouldn't have helped much. If Max and Ben hadn't been outside playing like kids with the dog, something awful might have happened to me. I worked again the next night, and I really wish I didn't have an update, but I do. It was about 3 a.m. I was mopping the floors when 4 men came in for coffee and snacks. As I rang them up, one of them asked if I knew anything about a car parked at the far end of the lot, engine running, lights off. My stomach dropped. "What car?" I asked. He described a brand new Subaru with no license plates, 2 men inside, arguing in the front seats. I told the group a car matching that exact description had been there the night before, except that time I'd only seen one man. The one who seemed to be their leader said they'd noticed the car while pumping gas. It was already parked when they arrived, and just sat there the whole time. As they passed it on the way inside, they could hear a man speaking loudly, pointing toward the store's doors. When one of the men approached the car to ask if everything was okay, the Subaru suddenly reversed and drove away. I explained the whole story, the same description, the strange behavior, the missing license plates, and how the man had sped off the night before when confronted. They exchanged uneasy glances, and immediately offered to stay with me for a while. I hesitated, but they insisted it was no problem. They hung around for about 20 minutes, until we all decided the danger had probably passed. I thanked them, topped off their coffees for free, and watched them leave. Nothing else happened during the rest of my shift, but I kept a sharp eye on the lot, especially when I had to step outside to change the trash at the pumps. The scariest part, I never actually saw the car myself. It was always other people who spotted it. I'd hoped I was just being paranoid, but 2 nights in a row, almost the same time, and always in a spot invisible from the register or front windows, it feels like more than coincidence. Thankfully, I have a few nights off. I can only hope that when I return, that car won't be waiting. My name is Daniel. I'm 29, and work the overnight shift at a small rural motel, family-owned, 2 floors, maybe 25 rooms total. My shift runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We don't get much traffic at night, maybe a couple of late check-ins, but most of the time it's dead quiet. That's why I took the job. I'm not much of a people person, so sitting in an empty building suits me fine. The layout is simple: a main office with the front desk, a few chairs, a coffee machine, and a rack of travel brochures. Behind the desk is a hallway leading to a back office, a little lounge with another desk, a couch, a mini fridge, and a TV. A small speaker back there dings whenever someone rings the front desk bell. Usually, I relax on the couch, watch something on my laptop, maybe nap, and only head to the desk when I hear the chime. I know the building's usual sounds: the heater clicks, the old wood creaks, the front door buzzes when a guest uses their keycard after hours, all normal. But the night shift plays tricks on you. Ordinary sounds can start to feel unsettling if you dwell on them too long, and sometimes what seems normal at first turns out not to be. One cold Tuesday night, in the fall, around 2 a.m., I heard the bell. I got up from the couch and walked to the office. No one was there. The lobby was empty. I looked out the glass doors. The road outside was dark. No cars, no headlights. I thought maybe I imagined it, but that bell is loud and unmistakable. I waited a minute. Still no one. So I went back to the lounge, sat down, scrolled on my phone. Not even 10 minutes later, the bell rang again. Jumped up and walked quickly into the main office, but once again, it was empty. The hair on the back of my neck stood up this time. I went to the doors and stepped outside. The parking lot looked the same as before. The cars were all parked with their lights off, and there was no movement anywhere. The road was completely empty too. I walked to the edge of the sidewalk and looked both ways, but there wasn't a single sign of life out there. I went back inside, sat behind the front desk. This time, instead of going to the back, I figured maybe some drunk person was messing with me, a ding-dong ditch of sorts. Maybe a guest kid thought it was funny, but after sitting there for 15 minutes, with nothing happening, I started to relax. Again, I leaned back in the chair, opened my laptop, and figured it was just one of those weird things I'd laugh about later. Then the bell rang again. Snapped my head up so fast that it hurt. The lobby was still empty, nobody in sight. My skin started to crawl. I stood up and walked around the front desk to make sure nobody was hiding, but there was no one. I checked the bathrooms of the lobby. I even stepped outside again. Nothing. I walked the lot a little, shining my phone flashlight, but it was just dead quiet. I went back inside. That's when I decided to try something different. Instead of going back to the lounge, I sat down in the chair right behind the front desk. If someone was sneaking around and ringing the bell just to mess with me, I wanted to be there to catch them. I turned the lobby lights down a little, so the room was dim, and I just sat there listening. It was so quiet that every little sound made me twitch. The clock ticking on the wall sounded louder than usual. The fridge in the back office clicked on and hummed. Every couple of minutes, the building creaked as it settled. I sat there with my arms crossed, staring at the bell on the counter. 15 minutes passed, then 20. My eyes started to get heavy, and I thought maybe the person had given up. I even started thinking I just imagined the whole thing. Just as I was letting myself relax and doze off, it happened. Bell rang, only this time I saw what was doing it. A pale hand came up from under the front desk, reaching over the counter and pressing the bell right in front of me. I jumped up so fast, I'm sure the chair almost fell over, and I bolted down the hall into the back office. I slammed the door and locked it. Stood there in the dark, my chest pounding. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how someone could even be under there. The desk doesn't have much space underneath, but it's enough for someone to crouch if they squeezed in. That meant they'd been hiding just a few feet away from me, waiting. I forced myself to look at the security monitors. There were 4 cameras, one on the lobby, one on the hallway, and 2 the parking lot. On the lobby feed, saw the chair had apparently tipped over. In my rush, the counter looked empty. Then in the bottom corner of the frame, I saw movement. A head poked out from behind the desk. I couldn't make out details, just the outline and the glint of eyes staring straight into the camera. I backed away from the monitor. I couldn't look at it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. I whispered to the dispatcher that someone had broken in and was hiding in the lobby. She told me to stay where I was and that officers were on the way. While I was on the phone, I watched the monitor. The person's head disappeared, and then I saw the person crawl out from behind the desk, on hands and knees, crawled to the door, and then stood up. He was tall and wearing a hoodie with the hood pulled tight, and his posture was hunched over. Then he turned around and started walking around the lobby, like he was looking for something. Then he turned and walked out of the camera frame toward the hallway that led to the back office. I pressed my back against the locked door. A moment later, the knob rattled. Just once, a very slow rattle, and then nothing. The dispatcher kept asking if I was safe, but I couldn't even answer for a few seconds, because my throat felt like it was closing up. After what felt like forever, I heard slow footsteps moving away. I rushed back to the monitor. The man was pacing around the lobby again. At one point he stood in front of the glass doors and just stared outside like he was waiting for someone. Then he walked over to the brochure rack and started flipping through the papers, as if he were sarcastically killing time. Minutes dragged by. Finally, I saw flashing blue and red lights through the parking lot cameras. The cops pulled up. 2 cars. The man must have seen it, too, because he suddenly bolted out of frame. A second later, I heard the front doors open. When the officers cleared the building, they found a large rock near the front door that was presumably used to prop the front door open, but they didn't find him inside. He was gone. They searched the lot, checked the road, and the officer told me whoever it was must have slipped out as soon as they pulled up. I kept playing it in my head after the way that hand just came up from under the desk and pressed the bell, calm as anything. Now every time I hear that bell at night, I think of that night, an experience. I don't think I'll ever look at that desk the same way again.